Hi, I'm Taryn Grome, co-founder and editor-in-chief of PharmaVOICE. Welcome to our final Ask the PharmaVOICE 100 roundtable today, before we head into our signature red jacket panel, Igniting Change, at 4 o'clock. We want to sincerely thank you for spending your day with us, and a sincere thanks to our sponsors as well, who made this inspiring day possible. Before we jump into our next Ask the PharmaVOICE 100 roundtable, we'd like to share a short video highlighting some of our 2021 PharmaVOICE 100 honorees and how they are igniting change, blazing new trails, and sparking innovation. Let's hear from them.
I'm blazing a new trail with 4,000 team members by my side. Together, we're reinventing how products are brought to patients. With an emphasis on together, we live our values, and with our life science partners are bringing more products to market than ever. Go team.
It's time to eliminate health disparities. It's time for bold, courageous conversations about race and health in America. Quality, equitable, culturally competent healthcare is not a privilege, it's a civil right. There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Sparking innovation by going beyond what is to see what could be.
I am blazing new trails with the BDML Master Trial that uses advanced genomic technology to match patients to the right drug at the right time.
I'm most interested in blazing new trails by exploring the innovations around digital endpoints and really understanding how these technologies in the form of AI, machine learning, and computer vision can really start to make an impact on clinical medicine and not just clinical trials.
I'm igniting innovation by opening up cell and gene therapies to patients in need.
Igniting change to make the world more inclusive and to help patients. It's my passion. It's my commitment.
Change and innovation seem to always require putting others first. And when you do, good things seem to happen.
Innovation. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the galaxy together. Oh, that's the Force? Same thing.
And now to our program. It's my pleasure to welcome Timmy Gard, Chief Innovation Leader, Love Lane, a 2018 and 2012 PharmaVOICE 100, who is sparking innovation by creating, not following trends. Next up is Anshul Purohit, President of Purohit Navigation and founder of Purohit Ventures, a 2021 PharmaVOICE 100, and she is sparking innovation by going beyond what it is to see what could be. And last but definitely not least, Red Jacket honoree Mike Rea, CEO and founder of Idea Pharma, who is igniting change through protagonism. To view our panelists' full bios, just click on their headshots below. Welcome, friends. I hope everyone is well, and I want to remind our audience to log in their questions into the chat so we can see what's on your minds. To kick us off, I had a question for all of you. All of you are innovators at heart. Can you share how you define innovation? As there are many takes on what this can be. Timmy, let's kick off with you.
Thanks, Taryn, and thank you for having me on the panel. It's always wonderful to be part of your events, no matter what they are. I'm looking forward to being in person again and doing them. But already met two nice people and smart people in front of me, so we're going to connect afterwards. You know,
that's what it's about.
If you had asked me that question a year and a half ago, I would have answered it much differently. But I'm going to answer it this way. To me, it's about the way to do business right now. You've got to be innovative in the way you're conducting business, because under the new normal, everything's changed. Dealing with clients, dealing with patients, dealing with consumers, dealing with advocates. It's a different way of communicating. We haven't been taught this way. We've have to learn by trial. Nobody knew that we were going to go through a global pandemic, and many pharmaceutical companies are not just North America, but they're global. So we have to pivot. So to me, pivoting, operating both internally and externally, figuring out a way to communicate driving the best health outcomes possible in this crazy world, you got to do it different ways. And whether it's through personal communication, non-personal communication, by voice, by Zoom, by team, by Google, whatever it might be, you got to figure it out. You've got to have the right platform. You got to have the right bandwidth. And I'm still trying to figure it out. But to me, innovation, I don't want to get into, well, is it through social media? Is it the right website? It's about the best way to conduct business that'll bring the best health outcome to our patients and consumers.
Excellent. Thank you. So, that ability to pivot requires agility and flexibility as well, and not being prescribed by the old ways of doing things. We have to continue to look forward and not go backwards. Anshul, you also are an innovator, and I'd like for you to share with us your take on what innovation means.
Thanks, Taryn. I echo everything Timmy said. I love all of your events. Thank you for having me. And it's been lovely to meet Timmy and Mike so far. I agree with everything, Timmy, that you said. And I think for me, it kind of layers to just seeing possibility, I guess. For me, innovation is just this last 2 years, if anything, or a year and a half has defined for me that we have to see possibility in every situation and be willing to try something completely uncharted to get there, and fail probably a few times as well. I've definitely made my share of mistakes over the last couple of years, or my whole career, but we all have, I hope. And I think that's part of the innovative process, is kind of seeing possibility and, just keeping your eye on the fact that it exists, and just continuing to carve a path until you get there.
I chuckled a little bit, but you're right. If you're not willing to make a mistake or take the chance to fail, you'll never innovate. You'll never change the status quo. Mike, you have your pulse on innovation as you track many pharma companies through your index. Talk to me about what innovation means to you, and what do you look for in terms of innovators?
Yeah, no, thanks for referencing the index, and again, thanks for the invitation. About 11 years ago, we started the Pharmaceutical Innovation Index, and we started it with a simple question, which was, if you gave the same asset to two different pharma companies, would they end up equally successful? And everyone kind of knew the answer was no, but no one knew why. And we thought, well, actually, the why is the most interesting question in our industry. So we set out on a path really of saying, well, actually, that's an interesting question. We should answer it. And then the most important observation was that we separated invention from innovation. So the kind of recognition of an idea and the ability to bring it to market. And that's the classical definition of innovation, is the creation of value, or the return on invention, if you like. And companies are not the same. I mean, some companies are more inventive and some are more innovative. Some are able to launch, some are less able to do that. And that's a structural organizational component. They can organize to do better, or they can organize to do worse in many cases. But I think, this last 18 months has shown us that, probably from 140 vaccines, we've got 5 or 6. The ability to deliver, the ability to launch, the ability to distribute, to manufacture, these are all critical parts of innovation. So I think it's easy to get drawn into this innovation being about creativity, but I think this, the creation of value from invention, I think that's really the definition that we like to work with.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think that sort of connects back to what Timmy was saying too, is that we have to think about new ways of doing business, right? And thinking about how to create that value in new and different ways. Anshul, you created a new business, PharmaVOICE Ventures, and it's getting to that point too, is about figuring out where that value lies in some of these early stage products. Tell us a little bit about what you look for with that organization.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's one we've been, sort of trying to answer since we launched. We're coming up with our algorithm as we are exposed to these early stage companies, and I think it is really about innovation and practice combined, because a lot of the early stage companies that pitch us or that we talk to have great ideas, and Mike, as you mentioned, they've got innovative thoughts or kind of concepts, but how they're approaching a molecular program or how they're thinking about their targets from a commercialization standpoint really matter in terms of, you know, where they're going to go and, you know, what commercial success can look like. Because we, you know, everything for us comes back to this idea of behavioral change and, you know, uptake. And ultimately what governs, you know, any of this is if there's a market for it and, or if we can create one. And I think, you know, a lot of what we think about is how is this company in their early stages signaling how they think about a commercial market, whether they're going to get there or exit to get there or what have you. And so what we've been trying to do is, I think, fine tune how do, you know, we love innovators and we love big thinkers, and how do we balance that with the back end and the pragmatism of the behavioral uptake piece. So yeah, it's kind of a balancing act for us in terms of who we work with in our portfolio.
Excellent. And Timmy, I know you work with many early stage companies outside, and as well as traditional pharma, as well as non-traditional life sciences organizations. So where are you seeing some of the biggest trends coming from, and what should we be keeping our eye on as we look to the future?
Well, it's a really hard question. I wasn't prepared for that, but I'll figure it out.
Yes, you are. Come on.
You know, Simon Sinek said it best, and then Mike just reiterated. If you don't know the answer to why, you're never going to get to the how, right? So with our early stage companies, or with our small cap companies, or those companies that are niche products or niche devices, you know, our whole theory, our whole motto, our whole vernacular is who loves you, right? Now, what does that mean? To us, it means, as Taryn, you know, it means building brands from the inside out and developing an emotional connection. So we've got to figure out, right, the why, right? Why is there that emotional connection from the early on, from the stage, finding that low-hanging fruit, figuring out a way to drive, and that we're, you know, we don't even call it awareness anymore. We have to do that, but building engagement, whatever that might be, to get to the how. And that's really hard. It's really tricky, but you know, we use that vernacular emotional connection, whether you're early stage, whether you're mature, or whether you're late stage. No matter whether it's a generic product, a biosimilar, the innovator, a device. And we try and stick to that. And from that, the innovative ways of doing business will come out. But Mike nailed it. You got to go. You got to go to the why. And without the why, you can't do the how. And from us, it's all about that emotional connection that we build.
Fantastic. And Mike, let's go back to that why. And in terms of what you're looking at, because you talk to a lot of companies, you talk to a lot of people out there, and you're gathering a lot of data. What are some of the things that we should be looking for and toward as we move post-COVID, if we ever get post-COVID, or whatever living with COVID looks like? What are we looking at?
So we kind of talk at the moment about learning being a superpower for organizations, the ability to learn, the ability to plan to learn. I think, you know, Anshul and Timmy have both used this word pivot, and, you know, and serendipity, right? I mean, a lot of our great blockbusters have been serendipitous. They've kind of turned left when they could have gone straight ahead, or they got blocked. And people mistake serendipity for luck. And it's not. Serendipity is about seeing an opportunity in what just happened, which is non-standard, right? You know, some companies are much better at seeing opportunity than others, but they're also better if they set up to see opportunity. So if they set up their early phase as exploratory, if they set up their, their endpoints in the study to collect more of them than they might otherwise, then you've got something to learn with. So, you know, we tend to talk about this being an asymmetry going forwards. You know, some companies are going to be, you know, able to learn better than others do. And one of our things about pharma versus, say, tech is, I mean, in tech, you can change the product. You know, you can modify it, you can respond, you can pivot that way. In our industry, the molecule that you bring from the lab and the molecule you launch, they're the same thing. All you're doing is learning, you know, where it works, where it doesn't work, which patients might benefit, you know, what the market's prepared to pay. So we know that learning is a superpower, because, you know, all you're doing is trying to uncover this kind of statue from within the marble. And I think companies need to focus a lot more on that process, you know, how the humans and how the machines work together to learn faster and better and, you know, more reliably than we've done in the past.
Anshul, you're nodding in agreement. So how do we uncover that piece, that statue of David out of the marble? How does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really all we focus on. I think it's the question about uptake. I mean, I'm sure Mike and Timmy both have had experiences as well where, I can't even countless times, we've been with a product that had such potential, but we couldn't, it just never went anywhere because we didn't find or carve out the right behavioral segment, or we didn't think about, who was going to use it or how, or what we were going to have to change behaviorally or from a mindset standpoint to get uptake. And I think what we're seeing now is that those types of decisions are pulling so much further forward in the clinical development process. We're seeing those types of questions coming in early stage clinical planning, and those they used to come much later in the pipeline. And so it's really nice to see clinical trials being engineered around multiple potential targets and multiple markets, and kind of looking at basket trials and things where we can think about what this could all look like down the road, because it does kind of set up a company to flex and to be more successful. So yeah, I think that couldn't be more true. And I think it's part of what signals to us for ventures that, a company is really ripe to work with. And on for the ProIt navigation side, that a lot of our clients are kind of there, which is really fun.
So, yes, Timmy. You're on mute.
First mistake, I can raise my hand and figure out how to chat. Just to amplify on that, a lot of what we do, our bench strength is in consumer. We touch on some HCP work, but mostly consumer. So, especially in the last year and a half, and you both, Mike and Anshul, you'll both relate to this. We spent a lot of time trying to understand the patient or the consumer journey. What's going on right now in terms of how they're thinking, or how the caregiver is thinking, and how they want to get engaged. And that is huge in terms of making sure that our segmentation is accurate. Go where the fish are, spend the money where the fish are, go to the shade analysis and spend it on that small portion instead of going all out and figuring out where that is. So we spend a lot of time in that area, because if we don't get it right, it's just not good. So that's where we spend time on research, understanding behavior, but making sure we get the journey right all along through in terms of the thought process. How does the left brain work, the right brain, where decision making, where do I go, how do I make it, who do I listen to, who are the influencers, what social platform, what digital, like all of that. So if we can nail that, then we're doing good. Have we nailed it so far and everything? No way. We need to learn from folks like Mike and folks who are driving the research from wherever, whether it's McKinsey, IQVIA, or Anshul, or whatever. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand that data to make sure, again, to get to the why, because you can't do the why, unless I can't do the how unless you know the why.
Excellent. Thank you, Timmy. We had a question pop in, and Susan T., thank you so much. You were reading my mind, actually. Mike, if learning is a superpower, how do you plan to learn? What is a learning strategy?
Yeah, well, I think you have to be open to uncertainty, right? You have to manage uncertainty, and that's, especially in our industry, I don't think any of us would pretend that you can predict. So we've seen the previous model as what we call a prediction paradigm, where you predict early how the drug works and everything is confirmatory or it's a failure. But actually, if you do an exploratory early phase, if you put the endpoints out there, it's a bit like if you sent a Google car out to map the United States and it had one camera on the roof instead of 15, you'd be learning a lot more slowly. And I think the same thing is true in early phase. I think range is important, the idea of not premature specializing in terms of your choice of indications. I used this metaphor last week with someone. It's a bit like if you decided your 4-year-old was going to be a doctor, maybe too early, but it's a reasonable thing. Doctors get well paid. It's a good career. But then everything you did to her from that point onwards was through that lens. She's going to be a doctor. That's all I'm going to do. But let's say you find out at the age of 16 or 18 or 25 or 30 that she didn't like it, or she's not very good at it. And everything that you put into it was really based on that. But she could have been a ballet dancer, or she could have been a scientist of some kind. If you didn't explore early what her talent was, you would never know. And you never know what makes her happy, what's fulfilling. But we do that to our drugs every single day of the year, right? That's exactly what we do. We decide our 4-year-olds are going to be doctors, and that's all that we ever find out is whether they're going to be one or not. And I think the idea of, going to ballet, going to hockey, going to music lessons, all those things are part of how we should be seeing our molecules as well. So the plan to learn is just to say, well, where are our uncertainties, where are our known knowns, and let's do something about addressing them. Let's set out to learn instead of to prove or falsify our first idea.
What a great analogy. You didn't put that pressure on your daughter, did you? I'm just
saying. Oh, yeah. All of it.
Anshul, you mentioned earlier about you're seeing these decisions being made far earlier in the development stage. What do you think is accelerating that early view?
I mean, I'm very heartened by the role of VC and just the where the investments are coming in now. If we look at, for example, the percentage of companies that are kind of established pharma versus emerging pharma that are getting funded, it's skewing much more towards emerging pharma now. And so I think part of it is that we see early stage investment with, smaller stage innovative thinkers. And it's making for a really interesting dynamic where we have the opportunity to think about molecular targeting differently or just clinical programming differently than maybe a larger firm would. So I think it's partially that. And just that, the folks I think that are asking for the funds now, and obviously we're just seeing so many more companies getting funded generally. So it's volume, it's both. It's share and volume that are skewing emerging. And I think that the psychographic of the folks that are in emerging pharma is more the psychographic that Mike is describing generally. And that's so heartening. It's really lovely to see. And of course, that all filters sometimes to big pharma anyway, because a lot of those companies are exiting. So it makes for a really great dynamic in our industry overall.
I think you're right. I think we're seeing this colliding of events that COVID has put forward. I think maybe we were on the precipice of some of these things, but certainly COVID has accelerated some of these actions. And we are seeing more money coming into the industry than ever before, which is great because it does allow some of those innovators, maybe they don't have to scratch so hard for the funds, and it can accelerate some of those discoveries that they're trying to address and some of those unmet clinical needs that we have. In terms of that, we're looking at, the world in a different way, and clinical trials have now become front and foremost. Can we continue to ride this wave as an industry? Are we in danger of slipping back? Who wants to jump in there first?
I mean, I think I'll jump in quickly, and I'm sure Mike and Timmy, you have some thoughts. I really think we can continue in this direction. Because of the funding, which we've talked about. There's also now, which is somewhat ancillary, but I think very relevant, the role of the patient and the visibility of the clinical trial process has shifted in an irreversible way. We have people who never knew about healthcare now asking for a specific brand of vaccine. I mean, it's a mindset shift for the general population. So I think the visibility of clinical trials overall, at least in areas that matter to patients, and I think our job is to make all the areas matter to patients, is going to drive that as well. I don't know, Timmy and Mike, if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to give you each a minute to close us out. So, Mike, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Timmy as he gets himself off mute.
No, I think I'll jump on that because I think we've had this interesting last 10 years in pharma where if you look at the biggest single cause of failure for phase 3, it's inability to recruit patients and to accrue enough patients into the study just to run a viable study. That shouldn't be happening, right? If we're talking to patients and we meet them where they are, then that's a different equation. There are other failures in phase 3. I mean, sometimes they fail to recruit the last patient. Some don't even recruit the first patient into the study. But sometimes those studies, even when they're positive, still fail because they don't get to the regulator and so forth. So I think we've had an easy industry in that regard. I think there's been lots of easy money going into big stuff. I think the more pointed, targeted the stuff that Anshul is talking about, I think that Timmy's word engagement, these things are both about making people, persuading people to take part, but also listening to why they might want to. I mean, those kinds of things are going to change. But I think the idea of sharpening our phase 2s and phase 3s rather than using them as big fishing trips, which is largely how they've been used, is I hope part of the direction forwards.
Excellent. And Timmy, I'm going to give you the last word here.
Yeah, so I'll just jump on to what both Anshul and Mike said. And I think there are two areas. One, people are getting smarter right now. There's a lot more activity out there in terms of information, so they're owning their health. I mean, who do you think 10 years ago somebody would say, I want the Moderna vaccine? I mean, really? That's unbelievable. But the other area where it's really going to explode and it's really going to help folks like Anshul and Mike dramatically, to me, is the whole growth of digital health and what's happening right now with all the different applications for curing, for better health outcomes. And that's going to open the door for clinical trials. It's going to open the door for funding. And hopefully it'll open the door for little companies like me for communications. So I think you have those two areas and the funding that'll come in and the research that's being spent and the academic. It's the holy grail that's putting it all together. So that's my piece.
Well, thank you. And that's a great piece to end on. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you spending some time with us and sharing your insights with our audience. You all are amazing and so inspiring. And I want to thank you again. And I want to thank our sponsors, Synovian Pharmaceuticals, Calcium, and CDO, Ogilvy Health, PowerXL, Syneos Health, Umotive, Health Union, Medtrix Healthcare, Alnylam Pharmaceuticals, eMeds, Lovelane, and North Highland. And I want to thank our audience for being so engaged with us and sending in their questions. And now we have a 30-minute break before our signature panel, the 2021 Red Jacket Igniting Change, sponsored by Synovian Pharmaceuticals, which starts at 4 o'clock. In the meantime, feel free to view the PharmaVoice 100 videos, chat with attendees, visit an exhibitor, grab a cup of coffee or a snack, and we'll be back here at 4 o'clock. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.